Hi, my name is Jamie Anderson, and this video is about my interpretations of the story and context seen in The Witch. So the first question is, how familiar are you with the story portrayed in the film? Well, the story can basically be boiled down to simply elements seen about the then commonly held beliefs about the witches. Now, the beliefs stemmed from the Malleus Maleficarum, which was a late medieval, early Renaissance text, I believe written in 1490, and it was about the nature of witches and how they are formed and how they act in certain ways. And throughout the story, we can see elements of this book and how the plot unfolds. Its focus is around, of course, Thomasin, who is a 17th century, in this film, is a 17th century teenage girl from Puritan New England, living in the forest alone with her family, her mother, father, and three younger siblings. In the story, there are various elements that we see of witchcraft. From the beginning, we see the infant baby Sam, her baby brother, being taken from her and used by the witch as being an unbaptized baby, being used for the various elements of being killed, cut up, and used as an ointment in order to fly. Then we see other elements such as the use of familiars. We see the rabbit with Caleb, with the dog chasing the rabbit, luring him into the woods. The rabbit can be seen as a familiar of the witch that seduced Caleb. In addition, the crow that comes in and pecks at the breasts of Catherine is another very familiar, well, it is a familiar, but it is a known story about what witch familiars do to people. They pretend that they're babies and peck at breasts, so that is another element. Another element you see is things like, for example, Thomasin having the bloody chicken fetus, the bloody milk from the goat, and of course the crops failing. All of these calamities are very much seen, and they go on and on and on as the plot builds more and more of these witch manifestations that you would see in Malleus Maleficarum are seen, which leads more and more people in the story to believe Thomasin is a witch. And so basically the plot of this story is essentially all the manifestations of witches from Malleus Maleficarum becoming more apparent as the story goes on and on, until in the very end Thomasin becomes the witch, signing the book, which is another element, and then of course participating in the Black Sabbath, which naked with other women in the coven. The second question, describe the socio-cultural context that appears in the film. As I stated before, this is 17th century New England in North America. These people are all Puritans. The Puritans were a Calvinist Protestant sect that had come over from England to escape religious persecution. They had a very strict code of morality that meant things like no drinking excessively, no smoking, no dancing, no excessive singing, things that they would view as exertions of the human body and other meanings of then work and prayer. Now, not only did they have a very strict view of their social code, but they had a very, very, very strict code when this applied to women. Women were not allowed to do any of the things said above, and even more. For example, this was a very patriarchal society, maybe even more so than other societies at the time. And so we can very easily see this in The Witch, where William is the patriarch, where he goes when the whole family is expelled from the town. They're expelled as well because the Puritans did not tolerate religious dissent from the main viewpoints. And another thing that we can see is we see Catherine throughout the film alleging that Thomasin is a witch from, the calamities that arise, and then of course seducing her father William and her brother Caleb. And so, of course, we see a lot of, and of course, so Catherine represents the strict puritanical views of women, whereas Thomasin can be seen as someone who wishes to break free a little bit more from that, but even that little bit is enough to send Catherine, who is very much desiring to see her daughter into that society of that Puritan, strict, patriarchal society that saw very much the suppression of women and, their sexuality and everything in general sort of kept downwards. And when she tries to break free from that, Catherine is sort of the main antagonist in that, trying to belittle her and keep her down and accusing her of witchcraft throughout the film. Question 3, why do you think these women were suspected to be witches? Why do I think Thomasin was suspected to be a witch? Well, of course, because of that. She was resistant to her mother and father. She tried to defy them on several occasions, but of course, she was also a beautiful young woman. And she was, of course, unmarried, and their family lived in seclusion. Seclusion in these puritanical sense meant the devil was trying to get them at every time. And of course, because she was a woman and she was unmarried and she was beautiful, she was seen as someone who would be potentially worthwhile for the devil to seduce or to get over to his side and deceive, so that he could use Thomasin as a means of subverting the puritanical Christian religion within the society. As the Malleus Maleficarum stated, where there are women gathered, there are also witches. And so they believed every woman had the ability to become a witch. And Thomasin, portraying the traditional, of course, when she even tells Mercy in the film, I am that very witch, she even acknowledges that she has that witchcraft ability within her. And of course, the calamities of the events allow for the others in the story, especially her father and her mother, to scapegoat her as a potential witch. And we see this over and over again in certain aspects of the culture of the day. So then the final question, do you find in our contemporary society any trace of this type of thoughts? There's two types of thoughts. For my opinion, I think there's a sociological thought, and then of course there's a historical thought. So for the sociological thought, obviously many societies, especially most societies, are still very patriarchal dominated. Men still have the top power. Places like the United States still have not had, and of course for those of you in Spain, Spain has also had a female prime minister. In fact, most of the party leaders in Spain, and of course even in America, besides with the exception of Hillary Clinton, have always been men. So women have never seen that sort of power in general within Western society. I mean, very few countries have had first female prime ministers. Britain has, Italy now has, but still Canada never has, Mexico never has, but still very few societies have women as their top leaders. And that, I think, is still a bit of a holdover, because I feel like a lot of people still do not trust the temperament of women to lead, which I think is an outdated view, but I think it is a view that is still subliminally biased towards women in regards to Western and even some other Eastern societies as well. For historically, I think that maybe, of course, we still don't have people being burnt at stakes for being witches, and all of that stuff, with people being accused of witches. So obviously it's not as bad for women as it was in the 17th, 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. However, as I stated before, sociologically there's still, I think, a bit of a gap between the power that men have and the power that women have, and I think that maybe is still of a bit of a holdover from that more patriarchal dominated ideas of the medieval ages and the Renaissance, and of course leading up till then. So, well, thank you.